Now we've got the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Ohio, Tim Ryan. Thanks for coming back on.
Great to be with you.
I think we start with what happened in Texas this past week. I think a lot of us see these shootings, see the darkest points of humanity, and our overwhelming reaction is just hopelessness and despair because we believe that nothing's going to happen, nothing changes, nothing has ever changed. So, what's the feeling like in Congress? Does anything feel different, or are we just fools if we really think that Republicans are going to change their tunes after the hundreds and hundreds of other shootings that didn't move them?
Yeah, I mean, I just heartbroken about the whole thing. I think if you haven't shed a few tears over the last few days, you're not a human being. To watch these parents and kids and everybody, just awful, awful. And I'd love to say, look, I think we're going to wake up. I think the Republicans in the Senate are going to wake up and they're going to pass the bills we sent them months and months ago. But I just don't think that's going to happen. And the best thing we can do is be honest with ourselves and recognize that, we need a couple more senators who support basic common sense, making sure violent people don't get a hold of these weapons. It's got to start in the Senate, and it's going to start with the elections in November.
Can you give a rundown on which of those bills that you just alluded to, which of those common sense gun safety bills have passed the House right now and are pending, languishing in the Senate?
Yeah, I mean, the one is the universal background check. This kid goes and buys weapons once he turns 18. He could have held territory in a war zone for 6 hours with the kind of weaponry that he had.
Yeah.
So universal background checks. Closing the gun show loophole, which means you can sell a gun to, whoever, and there's absolutely no background check at all. The Charleston loophole, which allows, if you don't get an answer within 3 days, you can just get the gun. So those are the three basic ones that we've sent to the Senate, and, just not getting, it's where great ideas go to die in the United States Senate.
That brings us to your race. You're obviously running for Senate. We're going to get into that race in a moment, but how has this moment between the shootings in Buffalo and Texas and, every other one before that, how have these shootings influenced your stance on the filibuster and the brokenness of that body?
It's just reaffirmed my positions and given, I think more short in my own mind is why we need to do these things. I mean, look, it's difficult, and the government should be in the position of helping people. And here we have, whether it's Buffalo, whether it's, what happened down in the most recent incident in Texas. Is there something that we can do? There's no magic wand that we're going to save everything. But when you look at these bills that are in the Senate, voting reform, some form of criminal justice reform, some form of basic background checks and, of people who could potentially be violent and get these guns, they're all in the Senate and we could pass them. We just need a couple more senators who are willing to reform the filibuster.
Now, your opponent, JD Vance, he came out with a statement on the shootings basically saying, let's not allow a mass shooting to push us to make any drastic decisions. He blamed the GOP villain of the day, which is doors, because apparently we need one entrance into every school now to turn every building into a prison. He blamed drug addiction. He blamed fatherlessness. He blamed a lack of religion, everything except the guns. What's your response to that?
Yeah, we've got a lot of issues in the country, but there are mental health issues all over the world, in countries that have as many issues with mental health as we do here in the United States. And the issue really is those people can't get their hands on weapons, and there are a lot of people who can get their hands on weapons who have nothing to do with mental illness at all. So it's a distraction, I think, in a lot of ways. And again, I think it lays out for voters in Ohio. Do you want someone who's going to be clear-eyed as to what the problems are and work with across the aisle, try to work with people to try to solve those problems? Or do you want someone who will take a position that he thinks is going to benefit him politically and that he could raise money off of? I mean, it's clear.
So can you give us a snapshot of that race as it stands right now? Any polling, just how the race is going overall?
Yeah, it's very, very close. We're neck and neck at this point, and I think that we've got a really good shot because it's going to come down to who's more Ohio. and JD Vance is a carpetbagger from California. I mean, you picture someone in Ohio, in Youngstown, or down the Ohio River, or Toledo, right? This guy gets a $15 million check stroked to himself from a billionaire from Silicon Valley. Now, who's he going to work for in the United States Senate? Or Tim Ryan from the Youngstown area, who's been fighting for working people for 20 years, and loves Ohio and's been here my whole life fighting the fight. So I think we're going to be in good shape. And, anybody who wants to help, it's timforoh.com. They can come on over and put a few bucks for us in the tank.
To that exact point, JD Vance, I think, has followed this Republican playbook of being one thing, which is a Yale-educated millionaire venture capitalist who worked in Silicon Valley, while presenting himself as something completely different. Basically someone who hates Yale-educated millionaire venture capitalist who worked in Silicon Valley. It's this phoniness that pervades his entire persona. That's not to say that it doesn't work, though. But do you think that people of Ohio recognize this?
No, I think they recognize it. I think they're onto him. I mean, he got $15 million from Peter Thiel. He got an endorsement from the former president, and he couldn't even get a third of the Republican primary vote. I mean, I think that tells you all you need to know. Very moderate Republican who was against Trump got 23% of the vote. I think he's repugnant to independent voters, and the more they find out about him, we're going to win this race. We're going to win this race because he can't be trusted. And I think everybody knows that now, whether you're Republican, independent, or Democrat, because they just spent $60 million in the Republican primary. And a lot of that money was calling JD Vance a phony for flip-flopping on his position on Donald Trump. So they know they can't trust him because he's a fraud.
Just say anything he needs to say to get elected. The lack of action in the aftermath of these shootings really does illustrate the extremism of the Republican Party right now, that you can have bills like H.R. 8, as you mentioned, that has the support of 90% of Americans and yet 0% of elected Republican officials. And it's not just gun legislation. Republicans are pushing abortion bans that are opposed by 70% of Americans. They're opposing bills on childcare, on letting the government negotiate lower drug prices, voting rights bills, all of which are overwhelmingly popular in this country. How would JD Vance factor into that extremism if he was elected?
He'd be all in. I mean, he already is. I think, here's the deal. He's an extremist because he knows that's what he has to be right now in order to get power. And then he wants to take that power and punish people, wants to punish women, wants to punish businesses that don't agree with them and have maybe a different political culture within that business. So much for the free market, so much for limited government. Everyone's free in America unless you're a woman and you have a complicated circumstance you need to deal with. Then JD Vance wants to be the guy to tell you what to do. It's free markets for business, and we need to leave businesses alone unless they have some kind of opinion about, LGBTQ or something else like Disney does. And then JD Vance wants to make that call. He wants to be in the room with the dealing with a pregnancy. I mean, come on, that's what they want. And so he's willing to take these extreme positions because it's going to get him power, but the guy can't be trusted. And I think everybody already knows that. So he would be all in. And I don't even like calling them Republicans anymore, honestly, because these guys aren't Republicans. They're extremists. The Republicans I know who are supporting my campaign, maybe they want to argue about tax rates. They don't want the government coming in and doing some of these things.
Right. Now, Ohio has been trending red for years. How can you reverse that trend?
Show up. I think one of the biggest problems Democrats have had, two main things. They've taken their eye off the ball on the economics and the real struggles of people across the state. And I think this is not, unique to Ohio, but gotten off the economic message, which was the backbone for Democrats for a long, long time. And we don't show up and you go to these areas. And so we've been to all 88 counties with this campaign already, spending a lot of time in rural Ohio, talking to voters. And so really focusing on the economics, focusing on infrastructure, focusing on pensions, focusing on economic security, tax cuts for working families, not tax cuts for billionaires, those kind of things, infrastructure, broadband. How do we plug these communities into the global economy? That to me is really important, but you got to show up and get that message out, and we're doing it. And I think that's why we're going to win.
I think that's such an important point that you brought up, that so often from the JD Vances of the world, it's all just culture war bullshit. Whereas, what you focus on is stuff that's going to have practical real world effects on people's lives. I mean, just recently we saw that Intel is opening a factory in Ohio too. Since you've represented your district, like what can you talk about just some of what you've brought in and, some of the tangible impacts that you've brought for your constituents?
Yeah, we've been able to, in old Rust Belt towns that are reemerging with technology. So I've gotten money for energy incubators where we're literally starting companies in this energy incubator that are buying old industrial properties and converting them over for these new more tech battery storage companies. We've got a whole thing called Voltage Valley up by where I'm from, where Foxconn came in, bought an old auto factory. They're going to make electric trucks in one side. They're going to make electric vehicles in the other side. Across the streets of General Motors battery plant that's there, 1,100 union jobs. So all about the future. And then our downtowns brought a ton of money back for downtown redevelopment, quality of life. We want to keep young people in Ohio. You got to have jobs, but you also got to have quality of life. And then the Intel project, which is the mother load of all projects, it's going to be $100 billion. Average wage is $135,000 a year. This is the kind of advanced manufacturing I've been pushing for, voting for, and supporting. And it's finally coming home to roost here in Ohio.
Hell of a lot better than the war on Christmas, but to each his own.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, you summed it up. Like, that's the thing, man. Like, you want to go down that road, we can fight. Oh my God, can we find things to fight about? Yeah. But how about we find the things we agree on and get to work on them?
Let's finish off with this. What's been the most memorable moment from the campaign trail? Like, has there been anyone you've met or spoken with that's really stuck with you, that's really encapsulated like why you're running this campaign?
Yeah, I just meet these people. They're so inspiring. It could be Ethel Gutenberg down in Cincinnati. She lost a son who got sick after 9/11, was a police officer in New York City. And then she lost a granddaughter at the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, a few years back. And, to me, I think like I'd pull the covers over my head. I'd never show up in the world again. And she's out there campaigning for common sense, gun safety. She's out there campaigning for healthcare. I just met a guy who lost his daughter down in Pike County. Good guy, Wayne, who's down there, and his daughter got sick because of some cancer happening in that county from an old uranium enrichment plant. And what did he do? He ran for school board, promised his daughter before she died, I'm going to do something to make sure kids are safe, hiring. And they put the gas in my tank and just keep me fired up to, keep going on these really important issues.
How can we help?
TimForOH.com. We gotta build the war chest up, got to raise 50 some $50 million. Like I said, JD got billionaires that'll stroke them checks for 15 million. Our contributions, 97% are under $100. So whatever you can do to send us $5 or $10, that'd be huge. And if you're in Ohio, we'd love to get you knocking on some doors for us.
Tim Ryan, keep kicking ass, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Anytime.